Premier, appreciate your time this morning. Greater Brisbane this morning emerging from that 3-day lockdown. There were no cases during that time other than one late yesterday. Was a lockdown worth it?
Absolutely. It was quick, decisive action. That was the advice from Dr Young, but also endorsed by the AHPPC and also endorsed by National Cabinet. So I asked National Cabinet to declare Greater Brisbane a hotspot, and they did. So I think that's a very clear signal about how we can all cooperate together, because we are dealing with this new variant strain, which is 70% more contagious. And just listening to your program then, of course, we're seeing what's happening in the UK with the NHS in some parts of the country being overrun with the demand because it is such an infectious variant of COVID.
Why did you go down the path of a lockdown? Do you have enough faith in your health authorities and contact tracers that they would be able to get on top of this if the economy wasn't to be shut down?
This is the advice that was taken, a quick, sharp lockdown. It gave the contact tracers all of the time that they needed to identify the contacts of that cleaner, which they have been able to do. And those people are in isolation at the moment. And that's why now for the next 10 days, it is mandatory to make sure that you leave home with your mask. Just put it in your pocket or your handbag, especially if you're in the Greater Brisbane region. And especially if you're going into shopping centres, cinemas, public transport, you must wear that mask. So it's really important for the next 10 days because that's the incubation period. So look, fingers crossed, and can I say Greater Brisbane responded so well to that 3-day lockdown. I'm so proud of every single family that did what the Chief Health Officer had asked them to do.
And how did the health advice come about in terms of the test at the Gabba this week? We've got 20,000 people set to pack the Gabba. You've just emerged out of lockdown. How do you go from a lockdown to 20,000 people at the Gabba?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's an outdoor event. Secondly, you must wear your mask going into the event. You must wear your mask going out of the event. And if you are going to get food or drink, you must put your mask on. So when you're sitting there, you can take your mask off, and they're actually reissuing the tickets as well to make sure that people are spread out as well. So look, hopefully everything will go well there as well, and it's really no different to what's been happening in other states.
West Australian Premier Mark McGowan says that all states and territories are pursuing an elimination strategy other than New South Wales. Is your state going for a suppression or an elimination strategy?
We've always said suppression, and let me say why that's the case. Because you will always have COVID cases that are coming in from international, from people around the country. We are seeing high rates of COVID, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. We're seeing larger numbers coming through positive in hotel quarantine. So there is always that chance, and National Cabinet addressed the flight crew and making sure that they are more strictly adhering to protocols. And then, of course, we're moving to the testing of all the shift workers in quarantine. Initially it was 7 days. We're moving to a daily shift testing as well. So, look, these are measures that we need to adopt nationally, because hotel quarantine is our last line of defence against this virus. And as you've seen in New South Wales, there is virus that is continuing to pop up in different locations. And look, the majority of them, is my understanding, that have been traced back to their original sources. But we have seen some states and territories where it has been eliminated. So in Queensland, for example, I think we went for over 100 days without any community transfer. I mean, that is phenomenal. I mean, very few parts of the world could claim that.
Premier, a number of tourism operators within Queensland are calling for some certainty now on the border situation. If your state is going for a suppression strategy, why can't you give them some clarity on when you plan to reopen to parts of the country?
Well, probably I could give you a two-word answer to that. It's called a world pandemic. We're in a world pandemic. I don't understand that people cannot simply understand that we are in a world pandemic. Life is not normal. It is not normal at the moment, and we are living with this situation. It is changing. It is unfolding daily, weekly. You know, we can't plan our weeks at the moment because we just don't know what's going to happen.
But
what I have seen, though, in
Premier, sorry
what
to
I have
interrupt
seen in
you.
Queensland is that a lot of the tourism operators have done very well. But of course, there are some parts of the state, such as Cairns and Port Douglas, that have not been doing as well as they might have done in the past when there was large volumes of international tourists coming into those areas. And it is going to be a while before we see international travel start up again. I mean, at the moment, can you imagine a family going overseas to the UK? You wouldn't be able to do anything. The place is in shutdown.
Premier, there's been some suggestions,
I just think people need to apply logic.
But are you willing, you're talking about, we spoke about the test at the Gabba this week. Are you prioritising sport, 20,000 people at the Gabba, as opposed to tourism operators who are desperate and crying out for some certainty?
Well, last week I was up on the Sunshine Coast, and I'll tell you what, you couldn't get a seat at a cafe or a restaurant. Down the Gold Coast, they've had bumper crowds over the weekend.
But are you worried about the long-term impacts, though, Premier? Because there's no money in these tourism. This is a tourism economy. I mean, particularly in the far north Queensland.
Well, everybody is in the world pandemic. There is no international tourism at the moment. There will not be international tourism for the considerable future, because this UK variant is now across a large number of countries across the world. I think people need to be logical and sensible and realise that we are in a world pandemic, and it's going to take time, and until everyone is vaccinated and countries are back up and running, before we can even think about returning to the same sort of situation we did in years gone by. Now, this time last year, no one knew what we'd be going through over the last year. No one. And I don't have a crystal ball to predict what's going to happen in the future. But I'll tell you one thing, I will do everything I can in my power to make sure that Queenslanders are safe. And I know this for sure, that everybody sitting around that National Cabinet table wants to protect Australians as well. OK, just finally, you say you are keeping Queenslanders safe, but what about your residents that are currently stranded in other states and can't re-enter the state that they live in? What do you mean by that? Well, there's people stranded in New South Wales at the moment. They have to apply for an exemption to get back. Yeah, in Greater Sydney. You say that you're keeping Queenslanders safe, but there's people currently stranded. Yeah, but we are. Well, that's reviewed at the end of the month. That's been very consistent by us the whole time. All right. So what would be your message to those people, Premier? That we're in a world pandemic, and we look forward to the day that we don't have to go through this. But until then, we have to take certain measures to make sure that people are safe. Premier Annastacia Palaszczuk, appreciate your time. Thank you.